My name is Laverne Dalgleish, the Executive Director of the ABAA Association of America. I'm actually also going to speak for Canada because I look after the National Air Barrier Association there, and we coordinate between the two groups there. So a little bit of history in North America. The reason for blower door testing and airtightness of buildings was really brought forward due to moisture problems, and there's a whole history of how we got there. A lot of work was done in Canada by the National Research Council on the benefits and so on. And then in the early 80s, the OPEC oil crisis caused the governments in both Canada and the United States to really sort of focus on energy efficiency to reduce energy use and so on. And in those days, the blower doors and the testing was relatively primitive. One of the things that you look back and wonder about is what we call the super suckers, where you would have a single fan, 100,000 CFM, to use to test buildings. That's pretty well gone. It's multiple blower doors in North America now. The largest building that I personally attended was in New York. It was 1 million square feet, a whole city block, 12 stories high. And we had 36 blower door fans set up to be able to test the building. When ABAA got going in the United States was in 2000, 25 years ago. There was really no sort of guidelines or anything. So we had to do a lot of things. Probably the first thing we had to do is say what was the performance requirements from the materials to the accessories, the components, and then the whole buildings. And as we look at these today, they're very, very loose compared to what we're doing now. Where a whole building in those days was thought to be tight at 2 liters per second at a pressure difference of 75. Today, we're getting down to 0.5 and less with normal testing out there. So that's a good thing. We're moving forward. And we had the various systems out there. And we had to also deal with even the materials. And I show this because a lot of times we are dealing with, well, my material's airtight, I should use it. So this is a test that I got done. And it was basically using peanut butter. And the whole purpose I was showing is that you have to have more things than just the airtightness of a material to work. And it actually did very good. It was 1/10 of what was allowed for the material, but then all the reasons of cracking and so on. So as an association, we had to even deal with material specifications and installation guidelines and everything so that we can get to the building so that they're worthwhile testing and would get some feedback there. So that got us, the question I was asked all the time as I talked to code officials or government agencies or building owners was, and especially on the code side, if we were going to make whole building airtightness testing mandatory, do we have enough people out there? And then everybody was asking the question, well, how do I know if the person I hire has the qualifications to be able to do testing? So that was the reason we took on a program to develop both a training course and a personnel certification program that met the requirements ISO 17024, and we're an accredited certification body to deal with that program. The other thing that was important was to be all-encompassing. So one of the things we did, and we take this through the training course, is this is all the different jurisdictions that are out there. What kind of testing do they require? What is the requirements? How do you prepare the building, et cetera? Because we wanted anybody that would be trained and certified to be able to work in any part of the United States or Canada. The other thing that we wanted to have is a proper standard. The most common whole building test standard was ASTM E779, which was really good as far as the equations and the basics, but really lacked as far as how do you prepare a building and all the other details that can affect the outcomes. CGSB 14910 in Canada took it a little bit step farther. It got into more details on how to build buildings or how to prepare buildings for airtightness testing, but was still lacking. And about that time, the Army Corps of Engineers decided that airtightness of buildings was very important for a whole bunch of reasons, and security. And they asked us to help rewrite their protocol. And their protocol is half a test standard and half a materials project spec, I should say. So we worked a lot of time on them to get it up to where we thought it should be. And when we were all done, we said, really, we have all the information that we need to do a proper whole building test standard. We just need to rewrite it in standard language, mandatory language. So we produced ABAA's very first standard on airtightness testing. That was back in 2018. And then we took it to ASTM, which was the most prevalent standards development organization for this type of work. And we ran it through them, and it was published in 2018 as an ASTM standard E3158. And it got into the types of testing that you would do and then how to prepare the building based on those steps and so on. So it was basically all the rules and all the guidance that you would need to properly conduct a test. And this is what we then took to building codes, for example, and had them update their requirements to allow the standard to be one of the ones that you could do. So we got into everything in that standard. We also looked at ISO 9972, that's in TC 163 SC1 I'm a member of, and we are actually updating 9972, but there was a lot of things lacking. We have a requirement to adopt an international standard if it's available and if it meets the purposes before doing a national standard. Then we got into the qualifications for people performing the tests. And we, as a certification body, the very first thing we did is, as anybody would do for training certification, is to identify the functions and tasks, and then the learning objectives of everything that had to be done from the time you start thinking about doing the test until you have a complete test report done. And up until that time, there was the only qualifications that was out there was, and it wouldn't be certification, true certification, but the blower door manufacturers would produce training and give them a certificate that they attended the course. And then there were some organizations out there that was producing training more on the single family homes than in large buildings. And even though ASTM E3158 has large buildings in the name, everything can be applied to every type of building that's out there. But in those days, this is going back again about 25 years, large buildings were really not tested, or there was probably, in my personal opinion, probably a dozen people in North America that could do the job properly out there. So as you can see in the training program itself, on the first picture there on the left-hand side, you can see it's basically a building mock-up. It's an 2.5 meter square or cube building that has a wall between the two, has doors and windows and everything. And part of the training course is on the right-hand side is the standard classroom. We walk through everything. The one on the left-hand side is more using the mock-up in the blower doors and the hand-on training. And you can see even in the middle pictures, we're getting into whole buildings out there. And although certification is separate from training, a good training program will help you, especially if you want to get more and more people into the industry, which was really needed. So the other thing that we're facing, we had a number of people, probably less than 100 that I personally knew, that were really good, experienced and qualified people. And we would actually use them to be the trainers and to require them to improve their competence in the way that you do for a person that's coming into it. We wanted to balance both. So we wanted to expand the pool, because that's the question, do we have enough people to be able to do whole building testing? And then we didn't want people that are extremely knowledgeable and know almost everything that they need to know to do the testing, have to go through the same sort of process there. So we took the training program is 5-day, and it's a little bit of a challenge to get people to go away from work for 5 days. But day 1 and day 2, you're basically in a classroom, although you are using some of the blower door equipment and so on. Day 3 and day 4 is really hands-on testing, using mock-ups, setting up the blower doors and everything. And then day 5 is you actually conduct a whole building test on there. And we now deliver it in 4 different areas across the United States. Our training programs are basically sold out as we put them. We still have a long ways to go if we want every building in the United States and Canada tested to get the people out there, but we are growing the business. And here's a close-up example. Even though the picture on the left is in a classroom, it's a bit of hands-on too. And then the 2 pictures on the right is just another picture of that 2.5 meter by 2.5 meter by 2.5 meter with the basics in there. Some training facilities have actually built a whole building within a training facility. It's a building within a building, has much more details and so on. And then this is an outline of our certification program. So we have 2 levels, and level 1 is we don't want to call it an introduction because they would be qualified to do a lot of testing. And we do focus on larger buildings. So in level 1, you can very simply come to the 5-day training course, and you can then have a practicum exam, which is to take a building from 0 to do all the preparations and conduct the test, do the report and so on. Now, because you have a proctor there during that time, that is not a cheap way of getting your certification. So in track B, it's basically somebody that has experience, and they can give us test reports. They're within the last 5 years. The test area, the surface area of the building envelope has to be a minimum of 2,000 square meters. And you, in both cases, they still have to write a 200 question exam. This is a written exam that deals with knowledge and skills. And that is whether you're going track A and track B. And then if you go track B, instead of doing the practicum exam for the abilities, you would provide these reports. And we have a checklist of about 20 items on the checklist that the test report has to include. And we review each one of those. Level 2, you can obviously go from level 1 to level 2. So that's sort of the first track, is that you're adding another 250 question knowledge and skills exam. We use the term skills for, well, let me back up. We use knowledge, that's the standard multiple choice, 3 wrong, 1 right, all the rest of the stuff that you need. And then for the skills test, we call it a written exam, but it's you may have to calculate the surface area of a building given the size, or you may have to do something. It's still in a written form per se, but it's not just choosing the right answer. You have to do some calculations, or you need to determine something. In track B, you can also go where you want to go to level 2 only. And so you, again, you can just do the exam, the written and skills exam, and you can give us reports. Now you're up to all the buildings that you if the reports on have to be a minimum of 4,000 square meters of surface area to be able for us to go through. And you're getting into zone testing at that point, where you can't do a whole building, you have to do some zones. That's also included in ASTM E3158 and so on. So we tried to deal with it where you come to the training course and you then do the different exams, or you have the knowledge and skills and abilities already, and we just need you to show them. So you can see in level 2, you have training completed, and you have in track A, you then have, you do the questions and so on. Track B, you're giving the reports in there. Track C is you went to training by the manufacturer of the equipment, so on, but then you also have to give us whole building testings and so on. So we tried to cover the whole gambit of somebody that's brand new or relatively new. You still have some pre-qualifications that's included in the certification scheme handbook. But we're trying to encourage people and to have the least amount of barriers to entry into this business. On the other hand, we want to make sure that anyone that is certified has the qualifications, they have the competence to be able to do a good and accurate report. We do tracking on an ongoing basis. They have to submit reports into ABAA every year. We need a minimum of 5 reports that we review and keep on file. And this deals with the that part of it. We also do some quality control where we would actually go and take a look at a building in the test report. This only comes up if we have some concerns. If the person's doing everything really, really well, then that gives us a level of confidence there. Any questions?